Jack Morrison wiped the grease from his hands and clocked out of the auto. Repair shop at exactly 11:47 p.m. It had been another brutal double shift, the kind that left his back screaming and his eyes burning. But he did not complain, because complaining was a luxury single fathers could not afford. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from. His 8-year-old son Ethan was waiting at Mrs. Patterson's apartment across the hall, probably already asleep on her couch with his shoes still on, the way he always fell asleep when Jack worked late. Jack smiled at the thought as he turned his truck onto Coldwater Road, the long, dark stretch that cut through the industrial side of town, where streetlights were more suggestion than reality. The night was cold, and the road was empty, and Jack was thinking about nothing more dangerous than whether he had enough eggs for Ethan's breakfast when his headlights caught something on the shoulder of the road. At first he thought it was a dog. Then he saw the uniform. He slammed the brakes so hard the truck fishtailed on loose gravel, and before the engine was fully silent, he was already jumping out, running toward the crumpled figure lying half in the ditch. She was a police officer, a woman maybe 35 years old, with dark hair, plastered to her face by blood that was still flowing from a wound on her left side. Her badge caught the moonlight. Her gun was gone from its holster. Her radio was smashed. Jack dropped to his knees beside her and pressed 2 fingers to her throat and found a pulse, weak and stuttering like a candle in the wind. Hey, stay with me," he said, pulling off his jacket and pressing it against the wound in her side. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening with a terror so raw it made Jack's stomach drop. "Don't," she rasped, grabbing his wrist with a grip stronger than he expected from someone this close to gone. "Don't call 911, Jack stared at her. "Ma'am, you're bleeding out. I have to—" "No!" Her grip tightened.
"They'll finish the job."
"They have people on dispatch, please." Jack looked down the empty road in both directions, his mind running fast through bad options. He was not a hero. He was a mechanic who coached Little League on Saturdays and burned grilled cheese sandwiches on Sunday mornings. But he was also a man who had learned long ago that doing nothing was still a choice, and that choice had consequences. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, tell me what I need." She told him her name was Officer Diana Reyes. She told him she had been investigating financial records tied to Captain Gerald Holt, a 30-year veteran of the department, who ran the city's organized crime task force and had, according to Diana, been running a very different kind of organization on the side.
She had found the accounts.
She had made copies. She had been stupid enough to tell the wrong partner. And 90 minutes later, 2 men in an unmarked car had run her off the road and left her for dead with a knife wound that was supposed to look like a gang retaliation. She had managed to crawl 30 feet before her body gave out. The copies of the financial records, she told Jack, were on a USB drive taped inside the cover of her personal journal, which was locked in her apartment on Fenwick Street. Jack got her into the back seat of his truck, packed the wound as tightly as he could with the first aid kit he kept under the seat from the time Ethan had busted his forehead open at the park, and drove. He could not take her to the nearest hospital because Captain Holt's reach extended there, Diana said, through an administrator who owed him everything. But there was a small urgent care clinic 20 minutes east, privately owned, run by a doctor named Vasquez who Diana trusted because she had once helped his daughter out of a bad situation and he had never forgotten it. Jack drove those 20 minutes like the road was trying to kill him, one hand on the wheel and one hand reaching back periodically to check that Diana was still talking, still conscious, still with him. She told him about Ethan without knowing she was doing it, asking once if he had a family, and when he said yes, a son, she said he should drop her off and forget he ever saw her. He told her that was not happening, and she did not argue anymore. Dr. Vasquez met them at the back entrance. No questions at the door, just gloved hands and a gurney and the quiet. efficiency of a man who understood that some things could not wait for paperwork. While Vasquez worked, Jack drove to Fenwick Street, found the hidden key Diana had described under the third flower pot on the left, and retrieved the journal. The USB drive was there, taped exactly where she said, and Jack held it in his palm for a long moment in the dark of that apartment and understood that what he was holding was either justice or a death sentence, depending entirely on what he did next. He thought about Ethan sleeping on Mrs. Patterson's couch. He thought about how he had promised that boy, over his mother's grave 6 years ago, that he would always do the right thing even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. He went back to the clinic, and while Diana slept under sedation with color slowly returning to her face, Jack used the clinic's computer to send encrypted copies of every file on that drive to 3 journalists, a federal oversight board, and a law school professor who ran a police accountability nonprofit that Diana had mentioned. Then he made one phone call to a federal tip line, identified himself by name, and told them everything. Captain Gerald Holt was arrested 4 days later. 2 of his associates were picked up the same morning. Diana Reyes spent 11 days recovering and then walked out of that clinic and back into a department that was, for the first time in years, beginning to clean itself from the inside out. Jack went home that first night at nearly 4 in the morning, slipped quietly into Mrs. Patterson's apartment, lifted his sleeping son from the couch, and carried him home through the dark hallway. Ethan stirred just enough to mumble something and wrap his arms around his father's neck, and Jack held him tighter than usual, breathing slowly, grateful in a way that had no words. He was not a hero. He was just a father who made a choice in the dark, and sometimes that is enough to change everything. If this story moved you, please show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel Kindness True Stories, where every story reminds us that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary courage. Your support keeps these stories alive and reaching hearts that need them most.